Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Asher Agency, a full-service marketing agency with offices in Indiana, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C. For nearly 50 years, Asher has helped our clients tell their stories, reach customers and prospects, and stand out from the crowd. To learn more about how we can help your company, visit asheragency.com or contact us at hello@asheragency.com. My guest is Lucas Fonseca. Lucas, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for doing this, especially on a very warm day where you walked here.
Yeah, I regret that decision, but you know what? It's fine. It's fine.
Right,
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you seem to have survived the walk, so thanks for doing it. Well, Lucas, you and I met, when was it? A few months ago, and I was really fascinated by your story, so wanted to hear more about that and let others hear your story. And I want to start at whatever the beginning is for you and talk about how you have come to be the founder of a business, actually multiple businesses, if I'm correct. But want to hear specifically about what were you thinking in terms of career possibilities, and how did that lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I come from Chile, so I came to study business to the U.S. When I came here, I knew I wanted to be in business. Yeah, I started my first business when I was a sophomore in college, and that's when I founded Language Matters. Of course, as you said, I also founded other businesses. I helped my brother start a business that he runs now. So we've been doing a lot of things, different initiatives, and it's been great. So what was the question again?
So in terms of, I think you answered it really well, but I want to dig into one thing. So how did you end up, you were a student at Grace College, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So how did you end up from Chile to Grace College? How did you end up choosing Warsaw, Indiana, of all places, or Winona Lake, Indiana?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that question. So I was actually looking for scholarship to come here to play tennis.
Okay.
And I'm from a medium-sized city back home, so I was looking for a place that would be similar.
Yeah.
But then I realized that a lot of the smaller colleges that were offering scholarships to us were smaller. And I also have a twin brother, by the way, so I came with them to study it. And so we got a lot of different offers for different scholarships.
Yeah.
But we ended up deciding for Grace College because it gave the most scholarship to both my brother and I. And then we had no idea where we were coming. Actually, it's really funny because we were on the plane about to land, and Arturo and I, my brother and I, looked out the window and we're like, oh, where are we going? Where are we? And so we asked someone at the plane, are we at the right place? We're coming to Grace College, Warsaw. And they said, the person told us, oh, yeah. So we're like 40 minutes away from Warsaw, and that's where that college is. And we were looking at each other and saying, there is nothing here. We only could see cornfields.
So this is the Fort Wayne Airport?
Right.
Yeah, for many of the people listening to this will know that the Fort Wayne Airport's in a pretty rural part of Allen County. But, Fort Wayne is the second largest city in Indiana. Not a big city, but a city nonetheless. And you don't see the skyline when you land at the airport. It's still a good distance away. So had you ever been to Indiana prior to, wow?
No. So I was in Florida before, so very different.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't have much experience in the U.S. and nothing. I've never been in Indiana, so.
Yeah, okay. So, and that's, at least you had your brother with you. That's great. And great that you were able to have that experience with him.
Absolutely.
And he's actually working in Warsaw now for one of the biomedical companies, correct?
Yes, so he's at Zimmer Biomed, but he also runs one of our businesses on the side. So
excellent.
He moved to Fort Wayne recently.
Oh, really? Okay.
I got to move to Fort Wayne.
All right. So can you identify anything that sort of sparked that interest in entrepreneurship? Was there anything growing up that made you say, I want to be a business founder someday, or did it just happen kind of organically?
Yeah, no, we actually grew up in a family where a lot of our family members own businesses and they're very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So I remember from a young age waking up and seeing my dad hustling from very early in the morning.
Yeah.
And I grew up thinking I really want to do that because I was able to see the independence that he had.
Yep.
But also I really enjoyed seeing how he could manage to create his own work schedule. So that's something that I wanted for me. I also realized that it allows you to be very creative.
Yep.
And it allows you to live out your passion. So I think that through family, we both realized that we wanted to be in business. And so I came to college thinking that I was going to do something, but maybe that changed when it's different to see it than to actually do it. So
sure.
But for sure, yeah. So family.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about language matters
Yep.
because it's a very interesting concept. I was struck by it the minute you described it to me. So for folks who might not be familiar with the organization, what is it that you do? What problems are you trying to solve?
Yeah, so we help organizations connect with Hispanics in their communities. So we do that through a variety of services. One of them is translation services, tutoring programs, and we also do consulting services for organizations that really want to get into the Hispanic market in a very authentic way, because we really want to bring everything that we know about our communities and give organizations an opportunity to really engage with those communities in an authentic way.
And you founded the company in Warsaw, and
That's
now
right.
you're, I don't want to say moving it to, but you're moving into the Fort Wayne market. What are some of the primary challenges in either market or in both markets that you see employers facing that you can help them address?
Yeah, I think that it's actually pretty simple, but it's not. So I think we have a shortage of workers, and we realize that in every industry, especially in the orthopedic industry, is where we realized first in Warsaw. And we also realized that there are a lot of Hispanics that are ready to work, but they're not necessarily always qualified to enter the workforce in a pretty high skill kind of workforce. So we really want to work with those organizations so that we can equip those individuals and also give the opportunity to those companies to hire from a larger pool of workers. So we recognize that the Hispanic community, being one of the fastest growing populations in Indiana and in the country, could really propel companies to have more opportunities to hire, retain, and also just have a more healthy workforce.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned translation. Language is
Right.
sometimes a barrier, but there's other barriers as well,
Exactly.
cultural barriers. What are some of the primary things you think are maybe the greatest opportunities for employers to maybe look at these prospective employees differently and bring them into their company in a way where they're going to feel welcome and be productive?
Yeah, I think that companies have an opportunity to open up their culture to be ready to create infrastructures to receive these workers is way more than just having a paper translated. I think that's what most people think it is about, but
Yeah.
it's actually way broader than that. So I'm glad that you're mentioning that, because when we prepare an organization to receive Hispanics, for example, there are a lot of things that have to happen for that to be efficient and effective. And when you really are able to get to that point, your organization benefits from many different ways and not just having things in Spanish.
Sure.
But you begin understanding more customers that might come from that market, and is an opportunity to kind of set your organization up for being a very Hispanic friendly, for example, organization. So it helps at every level, at the consumer, kind of facing the consumer level, but also internally. So the way I see it is one of our biggest strengths at Language Matters is we try to have people from different cultures in our team.
Yeah.
And that's our biggest strength, because we have a lot of people that sit at the table and they all contribute and they have different viewpoints, and it allows us to really make more informed decisions. And we take the best out of every person's, everybody's perspective.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about your team. Talk about how big is the team, and then talk about some of the folks on the team, the roles they play, and what your role is in kind of leading the organization forward.
Yeah, so we have, I always get this wrong, but we have about 10 people
Yeah.
on the team. We have a person that works closely with me. She's my assistant, and she really does. She does everything. She does all the background kind of work, making sure that everything is organized. But then we also have people that are more specialized in different areas. For example, the education area, we have teachers, people that went to college to do that.
Okay.
And then we also have translators and interpreters, and then also partner companies that we deal with so that we can have best services possible. We rely a lot on people abroad. We have teams that are not based in the U.S., and we do that because we really want to bring more experience to our area, and we know that there's so many people that you can go around in the Fort Wayne area, and even in Indiana. So we're trying to expand that to give our communities here better quality services.
So knowing that you're looking for a diverse team in a number of different ways, diverse in skills, diverse in background, how are you recruiting folks to your team? How are you finding these people?
Yeah, so it is actually wonderful, and it goes back to my tennis time. Because that's the way that the tennis team at Grace, for example, got a lot of international players. It's the same way I recruit. When you hire someone from one country, they happen to have friends and qualified people like them. And so we create this sort of network that allow us to have very good conversations with very qualified people. No, it doesn't always work, but we really have an outlet to gain a broader network by working with people abroad, but also by, not just being in Fort Wayne or not just being in Warsaw, but expanding that network to, the county, the region, and the state. So we really spend a lot of time talking with a lot of people. All the time that I spend networking, I'm usually thinking about two things: is this person, could this person be a client? Could this person be in our team? Because it's really important for me to balance the team and also the services we provide.
So you had this idea for founding a business, owning a business when you were younger. How is the reality of that stacked up against the dream or the idea that you had?
Oh, it's just so different because we, I remember my brother and I would we would start businesses when we were kids. I remember it was super funny now looking back to it. But I think the main difference is that it's actually way harder than, we see these movies about entrepreneurship and it's just nothing like that, where you have so many hours that amount to very little sometimes, but you have to go through them. And so I think that the main thing that has been really different is just the getting used to a lot of rejection sometimes, not because people want to just reject you, but just because the reality, the kind of like straightforward reality is that nobody cares, right?
Well, and your model is one that is, for a lot of companies, would be new, right? It's not something they already have in the budget. So you're asking them to do the hardest thing that humans do, and that's change organizational behavior. So it's not, while it's a great service, it's not an easy sell. And I think we've done people a disservice when we talk about entrepreneurship and when we talk about the fun side of it, or we forget to talk about the hard part. What are some of the things that you're doing to build your network in Fort Wayne? You had some natural opportunity to do that in Warsaw, having gone to school there. But what are you trying to do in the larger market of Fort Wayne to try to get your name out there and get your business established?
So I go to a lot of events, and I also, when I first moved to Fort Wayne, I was looking for something really specific. So I never just went to one event just kind of hoping that I would meet someone, but I was looking always for very specific people, and I feel that I've made those, I've taken those steps and things are going well, but it's always, for me at the beginning, was finding those strategic partners, people that I can trust, people that I feel comfortable with, and people that have a similar vision for what we could do in the area. And so once I found those people, they naturally have connections, and then it becomes a much more natural kind of way to expand into the area. And I think that the finding those right people at the beginning is the hardest part, because there are a lot of people that want to do things, but maybe they are not the right fit to be your partner or to work with you, or even to just, get recommendations from. So I think finding who you can work with, that was for me the main thing when I got to Fort Wayne in the first place.
So Lucas, can you tell us a little bit about some of the work you're doing? What are some of the things you're working on right now? And obviously don't give away too much, any trade secrets. But what are some of the things that you're doing now? Maybe they're the top of your to-do list. They're keeping you up at night. They're exciting you. Maybe a combination of all those things.
A couple of things. And is it okay if I kind of list and talk a little bit about them? So I would say the number one is we were we were able to test new services that we offered in the city of Warsaw, and they were extremely successful.
Okay.
So at this point, it's our priority to replicate those around the state as much as possible.
Okay.
And just because we made a lot of mistakes and we also saw a lot of success.
Sure.
And we've created, we have proof of concept and something we can take to other communities to benefit them. So I would say that's one big priority. And then the other thing that we're doing is we really want to bring in more talent to the area by enhancing our company's capacity. So when I talk about improving my team, I talk about creating connections maybe with people in other countries, in other places in the U.S., so that we can offer better quality services and improve and enhance everything that we have. There are amazing companies working in our area, but I believe that it is always a good thing that other companies can grow and can bring in more quality, so that we have this sort of the way that we see quality can also change, so can improve. So that's another important thing that we're doing by just really investing into the team and into the company to offer those services. And the last thing we're doing is really getting more into technology. We realize that technology is the future in a lot of ways.
Sure.
So we're really looking into developing more opportunities for people to learn a language, but we're really looking into technology to merge between the academic side and the technology to create unique opportunities for people to learn English, because we realize that is one big factor that could improve quality of life and also our workforce in our community.
Sure. Well, one of the things that we're seeing with AI, and I'm gonna get out of my depth pretty quickly, is that it is transforming how quickly things like translation can happen.
Yep.
And what I'd like to hear from you is what are some of the things that AI can't replicate? What are some of the things, how do you leverage technology in a way that is useful to your company, but what can your company do that the technology can't, I guess is the question that I'm asking.
Yeah, so I'm going to need to separate this between education side, learning the language, and then actually using it for communication. So when it comes to just communication, let's say I didn't speak any English and I come to you and you want to have a podcast with me. I think technology has gotten to a point where it's really precise in a lot of ways. But what technology, even AI, can still do is it's very hard for AI to recognize intent. There are a lot of things that are hidden to the technology still, and I think that's going to we still have a long way before we can get there. And so I always give the super simple example that you just plug in any sentence or a paragraph in Google Translate, for example, and we get a lot of stuff wrong, and it's just the way it is.
Sure. Yeah.
It is helpful, but as a company, we don't rely on that to deliver communication.
Yeah.
We use technology to improve our process, maybe to, count how long a project is going to take, or to do some of the, basic kind of translation. But we always have to have people looking over that work. Yeah. In the education sphere, it's even harder because that's something that there's not an injection that makes you speak another language. And AI, to me, sounds a little bit like that. There's no way to replace the connection that you have with a person when you can speak to them in their first language. And so even if I had a translator, even if this thing translated your voice into Spanish, I know it's not directly your words in Spanish is being interpreted. Yeah. And I think that's super powerful. What people don't realize, not everybody, but some people don't realize, is that communication in our first language is such a powerful tool. Yeah. Beyond just the communication factor, it also sends a message to people. If I learn English or if you learn Spanish, it tells me you care enough to put all the work that it takes to get there. But that's a little...
No, that's great. That's I think that explains very well why we're not going to get replaced by technology anytime soon.
Right.
So what's next for Language Matters? When you look ahead, again, without sharing too many trade secrets, what are some of the things you're hoping to do in the next 5 years or maybe even beyond?
Yeah, so we are planning to expand to the region fully because I think right now we're kind of spotty in this side of Indiana, but we really want to have a strong presence in the state.
Yeah.
And for that, again, all of these initiatives that we're working on really have to take off. And that means a bigger team, strong partnerships with organizations in the different areas, South Bend, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, Bloomington. And so I'm spending most of my time actually developing those relationships because to me, the relationship will lead to those strong partnerships that are going to help us and do what we want to do.
Yeah.
Unless you want it to be more specific. And
I
could be more specific.
That's great. And if you don't mind my asking, what are some of the other businesses you're involved with or that you founded or that you hope to be involved with? Because obviously you have an entrepreneurial spirit. Language Matters is doing well. But what else are you working on?
Yeah, so my brother's business is something that we failed at starting when we were really young.
Okay.
And then we gave it a second try, and now he's doing really well. He recruits students to come to college in the U.S.
Okay.
And that is going really well. We're really excited about it. We get to participate because a lot of the students that come need to learn English.
Sure.
And so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Really excited about that. I help when I can. Language Matters takes up most of my time.
Sounds like it's a pretty big undertaking, yeah.
But there are all the other initiatives. We have a nonprofit, which is a thrift. It's like a pop-up thrift store, and we actually use all the proceeds to give scholarships to students that want to come to the U.S.
Oh, that's excellent.
So that's fun to do. Everything else we do is more on the investing side. We have rental properties and a couple of things we do on the side, but nothing as structured as Language Matters or ATC.
Sure. So the work that you and your brother are doing to recruit students, college students to the U.S., is that on behalf of any specific college, or are you sort of agnostic to the college that it is? You're just bringing them this way. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, we just bring them. Of course, we want to bring them to Indiana because we really feel that that's is where we want to bring talent.
Yeah.
And so, but no, we bring them anywhere and everywhere, and we've seen a lot of success. We still think that there is a lot of work to be done, especially to make the information more accessible to people in other countries, because a lot of times we have great individuals that could come, but the lack of information prevents them from actually coming here.
Sure.
But we just, I think, we just brought a couple of students to the Fort Wayne area, I think last year. So we're definitely looking to do that more.
Well, and that concentration on Indiana makes sense because you and your brother can tell the story firsthand of landing in the cornfield and saying, where are we? So you can empathize. All right. Well, I want to pivot to some more quick hit questions, if you don't mind. You've founded businesses at a very young age, I might say, and you've probably learned some things along the way. But what would you say is your best advice to someone who's looking to start a career about finding a path that's fulfilling and where you can have some success? What's your best career advice?
I would say that there's so many, but I think I'll say a couple. I'll say one of them is to really realize the importance of having a network. I think a lot of people when I started young, I didn't realize how actually having those relationships could change my business and my career, and it really has done it. So I would say worry about and care for that network from a very early age. Yep. And then also, I talk about this with my brother too, with Arturo, and I think actually I responded with that question. A lot of people don't know what comes first, the big contract or the experience. How can you get to the big contract and the important work without the experience, and how can you get to experience without the important work is so hard. Well, I would say my biggest advice for people that either want to get into business or a marketing role, something like this, would be to always give 110 because when you don't have experience, that's the way that you can make up the fact that you don't have the experience and you provide work at a level that nobody's expecting. And then when you have the contract and you have the experience, you continue doing that.
Sure.
And I think that people sometimes think that is about getting a big deal and then doing the work and being done. But I see it as you get used to giving 110, and then you start giving 120, and then you actually just get used to the discipline and the hard work that you have to put out in order to get business. So I see it as as I progress in my career as a business owner, things get harder just because I'm willing and I want to put in more effort.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're raising the bar for yourself as
Exactly.
you go. And while that's difficult, the much more difficult path is failure and not doing
Right.
that and being, outcompeted by others. So it sounds like you're on the right side of that, even if some days it may feel like you need a break.
Yeah.
All right, second quick hit question. And this can be about the work you do in general. It can be about entrepreneurship. It can be specifically about the work that Language Matters does. What's one myth or misconception about that work that you want to clear up, or maybe something that's underappreciated that you want to kind of shine a light on?
Yeah, I'm so sorry that I'm kind of responding this kind of long, but I love this question too.
Totally fine.
Big misconception about business owners or entrepreneurs of small businesses is that you start big. I think that unless you raise a lot of capital, you actually start little.
Yeah.
And I don't actually know where people think that, how and why people think that you can start with this huge salary.
Yeah.
But to me, it's always been about, I want to have this role and this job and do the things that I do. And that's my biggest payout. Of course, I have to live.
Sure.
So I had to be logical about it. But I think that's a big misconception, is that you start making a lot. And it actually takes so much effort to get to the point where you feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
A lot of people are just, maybe they shouldn't begin as business owners.
Sure. Well, I think there's a couple, reasons why people may think that. Number one, they want it to be easy.
Right.
And number two is that we are very much a quick fix society.
Right.
And, I'm going to start this business and I'm going to be a millionaire. That doesn't happen very often, especially, in your case. One of the things that I admire is you actually have employees. So, if you, and you know this better than I ever will, but you have to pay those employees before you pay yourself. You got to pay your bills before you pay yourself. So, if you're looking for a quick path to a lucrative salary, entrepreneurship may not be it.
Exactly. And I would love to mention one thing is that even Language Matters, that is always done well. I never did the business thinking that something could go wrong. And someone asked me once, Lucas, how can you go and do things and kind of no worry about what could happen? And I told them, I never thought that you're right. Yeah. I could fail and then it could be. I was never thinking about what could have been.
Yeah.
I was always hopeful for what it could be. And that really kept me going. I didn't get paid through Language Matters for the first 2 years.
Wow.
And my first ever salary, and I say decent salary for the work that I do, started this year. So that's 4.5 years after we founded the company. So before that, it was a little harder. It was limited, but now is the first time. We actually celebrated, and my assistant sent me an email. It was super funny because she said, "Congratulations on your first real salary as our CEO." And I actually appreciated it.
Yeah, sure.
It took 4.5 years, and I think that's something that people don't realize.
Oh, sure,
it takes
sure.
So long.
I think that's very much underappreciated. So that's really good for people to hear that, even if it's not what they want to hear. One last quick hit question about how you do your work in terms of any tools, especially someone who's really busy, right?
Yeah.
Tools or tips or tricks or hacks, things that you use on an ongoing basis that help you be effective, be efficient, that you think other people should know about. And it doesn't have to be a technology tool, it can be, but something that helps you do your work effectively. Yeah.
So a couple of things. For me, when I started, I thought it was about this amazing software that does it all and you just rely on it. It is actually, for me personally, is anything that keeps my mind clear. That's number one. So it's funny because my wife thinks I'm a little crazy because of it, but my desk is empty.
Same for me. Same for me.
It has to be empty.
If I have 2 things on my desk, it's like having 1,000 things on my desk.
Exactly. And so I keep it empty, and I try to, my office is empty.
Yeah.
It's clean. Everything is in its place.
Yep.
I bought a big cabinet thing, and I put everything inside, and it's got doors, because before I had, just like the bookshelf, and now I said, no, everything away.
Yep.
So, and just to go back to why, it's just, I need to have everything I need to have a clear mind, because sometimes it's about just making that hour that I have to be at my desk 100% productive. And if I have a lot of distractions, I can. So I eliminate distractions. I automate things that I can automate through software and investment. And then number 1, I would say, I spend a lot of time thinking, how can I get to do this process to be more efficient?
Yeah.
But that is very counterintuitive for a lot of people, because if they looked at my workday, they would think, but you have all these translation projects, and you have this tutoring hours, and you have these consulting hours.
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing those? Because if I do that, I'm never going to get out of that.
Yeah.
And so I actually spend a lot of time just looking through the processes, looking how I can do things more efficiently and outside of the business, which, it is counterintuitive at first.
Yeah, well, and I especially like what you said about that clear workspace. It's not for everyone. It's funny you mentioned this, Lucas, because just yesterday we had some guests in the office, and my office has nothing on the desk except for a blank sheet of paper and a pen. So if in my workflow something pops in my head, I write it down and get to it later. But there's literally no other competing paper, emails, anything else. One of my coworkers downstairs, I won't mention who it is, other than to say it's Jill Brown, has paper everywhere. And that works for her. She's been successful for 30 years. For me, that's my worst nightmare. So it's all work style. But, and I'm really glad to hear that you found this at a much younger age than I am. I think a key component of success is figuring out that what works for other people isn't necessarily what's going to work for you. And even if it seems strange, and even if other people laugh at it, if it helps you be effective in a world where there's so much potential distraction and there's so many things competing for our attention, if you can find that space where you can do really effective work and focus, whatever that takes, you have to figure that out. And some people find it earlier than others.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been, I think I like what you said about it doesn't work for everybody. So a lot of people ask, well, how do you do it? And I tell them, well, this is how I do it, but that doesn't mean it's going to be your path. Yeah. Because what it makes me feel when I see an empty desk might be completely different than what you might feel. And so, yeah.
Well, and, when we talk about productivity, right? Getting more done. For in your case, being able to start other businesses and have them have the potential to be successful, or have more time for connecting with people in the community or connecting with your employees. There are things you have to sacrifice to do that, right? When people say to me, well, how do you do all this stuff? Not that I do nearly as much as you do, but I'll say I watch almost no TV. I'm not on Facebook. I don't play video games. And people say, well, that doesn't sound like fun. And I'm like, I have a ton of fun. I just happen to have fun in my professional life. So, one of the sides of entrepreneurship I don't think people hear enough about is the things you have to sacrifice in order to do some of the things you do. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that, so they don't. Is there anything else you think you do, either work style wise or with your time, that allows you to be effective?
Yes. I pay for all the things I'm bad at. I don't do anything that I'm not good at, because I did that before and I looked really bad.
Yeah. Can you give me an example to kind of round this out?
Yeah. I am not as organized as my assistant.
Yeah.
I'm not as thorough. So I pay for that. I pay for her time, because it's cheaper for me that she gets to do it than if I try to do it. So I do that with everything. If I'm not very good at something, or if something's tedious, again, I try to also, it's not only my time, but I try to preserve my attention, my focus.
Yeah.
And so if I have a task that I'm good at, but maybe it's going to take half of my energy for that day, I don't do it, because I want my full energy. And so it's 2 components for me, it's time and focus. And if I have, and so for one day, for example, if I have a very important networking event and maybe a presentation or a big client that I'm pitching to, maybe that's enough. Maybe the networking event and the pitching that client is everything. That's my energy. That's my 100% of my energy. And so if there's anything else that comes up that day, I'm going to pay for that. And so my workers are going to take care of all the things that they need to clear me up so that I get to do the things that are going to really move the needle for the business. And so I think, I'm so sorry, but I think I want to mention one thing with that. It's so funny that my wife sometimes comes home and she finds me one day. I remember after pitching to a city, I did that. That was the only thing. It was a 30-minute meeting.
Yeah.
And she came back like for lunch and she asked me, Lucas, are you done for the day? You seem very relaxed. And I told her, I'm done. I did my full day in that one meeting. I prepared for it. I went to the meeting and now I need to look at other things, but I need to relax. And so sometimes it's not the 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. It's more like the focus that you have for an important thing.
Yeah, well, I love that advice. It's about managing your energy, right? You know, you could have an hour of what looks like work that takes 8 to 9 hours of your energy, but you have to manage that. And then there are days when, you know, maybe you put 10 hours in front of a computer and you can catch up. But if you overtax that, you're going to be in trouble. You know, and it's even small stuff. I tell people all the time, one of the best epiphanies I ever had, I was ironing shirts on an ironing board on a day. It was like 75 degrees and sunny, and I'm trapped inside ironing shirts and doing it poorly. You know, the shirts looked worse when I was done than when I began. And I had the epiphany. I was like, why am I doing this? What, you know, when I can send it to a dry cleaner for $2 a shirt, because I thought about it leading up to it and put it off and put it off and put it off. So there was the mental energy of, so here's something I hate doing. I have to do it. I don't want to do it. I did it. And then after it was like, why did I waste that time? So what really was, 30 minutes took 4 hours of energy. And I could have just put it in a bag, left it at the corner, and somebody could have picked it up and done it for me. And I know that's a really small example, but if you translate that to our work days, it's why sometimes people sit in front of a computer for 8 hours and feel like I didn't get anything done, but I'm exhausted because of the mental energy in that aspect. So I'm really glad you brought that up. So everybody try a clean desk and measure your productivity in terms of energy expended more than hours put in, and maybe you too can have a successful business.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Lucas, I really appreciate you joining us with everything you have going on. I appreciate your time, and thanks for telling us a little bit of your story.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Yep, and thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to this episode of the Asher Marketing Podcast. We'll be back next time with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.